Tim Byrne, Almost Live. I'm Tim Byrne. Tonight's episode for you guys tuning in is going to be Cushman and Wakefield, Dave Anderson. He contacted me via LinkedIn many weeks back and asked if he could come on the show. It's funny how social media's taken off. I never, ever thought this podcast would work, actually. And I realized that it was making a cause and effect on the marketplace the minute a guy like Dave Anderson contacted me and said, I'd like to come on. Social media does work. And I want to wish everybody a Merry Christmas, and I don't know what else to say, so really enjoy the show, and I'll talk to you when we're all finished, okay? This is Tim Byrne, Almost Live. We're down at PM Expo. Davey's taking pictures with Kevin the Goat.
Yes.
You need those headphones on, young
okay,
man,
fantastic.
or else you're not going to hear anything. It disappears all the time. We've been on YouTube all day, Goat Vision. Thank you for coming down, by the way. You contacted me via LinkedIn.
Absolutely.
You told me you have 20,000 odd.
22,000. Yeah.
How long did it take you to collect that many people?
Quite a while, but it's been a great resource for us, Tim. Of recent we.
Is that everybody in your company? Like, did you tell everybody in your group to be aggressive about bringing people together in LinkedIn?
No. Most people in our company have 1,000 or 2,000 contacts, but I've taken it to the extreme for sure.
Why?
It's been a great resource for us to sell. We recently sold the Hunters Point Golf Course. It's the largest block of land in Niagara region. It's 1,473 homes that are going to go in, and we sold it off LinkedIn.
Like the advertising, the way you obtain clients was totally off LinkedIn? Like it wasn't?
No. That site, Tim, we ended up marketing to every land developer in the country, every home builder. We had 3 offers on the table, and we were able to sell it to a Shanghai-based investor for in excess of asking price.
Is there not a new foreign investment tax, though, that kind of put a nicker in Toronto's development or Toronto's buyback, which Montreal doesn't have that, right? Sorry, I'm jumping all over the place here, but there's a tax that they apply to foreign investment.
Yeah, there's some element of taxes. There's also land transfer tax where they charge double on the land transfer tax in some cases. Or Toronto is already 4%, but at the end of the day, that's just a drop in the bucket. It's not a big number anyway.
They say Montreal is going to be the next city that has a foreign investment boom. Is that true?
Yeah, it's definitely happening. The very first market was obviously Vancouver.
Right.
Ontario had a lot of foreign investment, and both in manufacturing as well as in investments and capital marketplace as well.
If Montreal's the next one, it's going to last for 3, 4, 5 years until it cools out again. What's the one after that? Halifax? No.
Yeah, I think anywhere where there's safety, there's a lot of dynamics that are changing in the marketplaces. So what used to be deemed as secondary markets are now primary markets, and you're only seeing that as these light rail transit systems go in. The focal point now is starting to go where there's intensification happening, and you're going to see some lift. You're seeing that happen south of here, Stony Creek. Yep. You're seeing Brampton, they got a light rail transit. Waterloo, there's a lot of development happening around these light rail transits.
When the GM shuts down, and I believe Maple Leaf Foods has announced out in London that they're investing into a 600 job, 200,000 square foot facility. Do you think the economy's on a rocky road right now?
No, I don't. I think that was all, that's all part of the bailout that happened prior. The big 3 were in trouble.
That's what I said too.
There's a technological change that's happening. They're smart. GM's being smart. They're not cutting just Canada. They're cutting in the States, stateside, and it's the future. You have Ford dropping off all their cars except for Mustang. They're going to strictly trucks and electric cars.
Yeah, electric cars are going to be the future, right?
Absolutely.
I think the auto industry, and why I bring it up is because that plant going empty and 3,000 people coming to the marketplace, is there not a spin-off effect from that in the global economy? Cambridge has Toyota, and Toyota just dumped a ton of money into their factory.
Absolutely.
But is there not like manufacturing, when 3,000 people in that plant shuts down 2019, 2020, is that not going to put another 20,000 people unemployed? Does that lower, like Oshawa's already a depressed land value as it is? Does it not just make that into a catacomb, like it gets worse?
Initially, yes, but in the long term, no. If you look at what happened with the BlackBerry fallout, 2,200 employees were laid off.
Yeah, right.
Right after that happened, you had well-skilled people in the marketplace. Google moved in. You have other major players that have moved in the marketplace, Microsoft. The local tech companies have gobbled up all that intellectual property, highly skilled individuals, that these people will be repurposed. There's definitely opportunities that'll come in.
BlackBerry is being reborn.
Yes.
The autonomous driving, I understand they're heavily in with Cadillac, GM.
Absolutely.
Has it helped out in London, Kitchener, and Waterloo with them being reborn, or are they still a little toothache in the side of the economy out there?
No. They're kind of taking a brand new direction.
I know, right?
They have a partnership with Ford for the infotainment centers.
Right.
So we've had one of their facilities that was vacant. That was a Cushman and Wakefield mandate. They've ended up releasing space in the space that we were trying to fill. And they've signed joint deals with Ford, and they're doing other deals like that. They own a lot of intellectual rights and patents on things that there's a lot of inherent value.
Does the Ontario market with the new government allow for better, faster development now than it did with Kathleen Wynne? Is it a better market for developers now?
I think it is. I think it is, but whether that's Kathleen Wynne or the matter that the timing. There's
And NAFTA doesn't take a big effect on us with the tariffs and the steel and aluminum. You talked about Stony Creek, right? I mean, Hamilton, the Hammer, Stony Creek. There's a lot of steel jobs.
Absolutely.
Does not NAFTA just torture the shit out of that marketplace?
We haven't seen that NAFTA effect really happen. We just haven't seen it trickle down. When you look at stuff like where there has been closures, there's been closures south of the border and north of the border, like the General Motors. We don't see any closures happening in Canada that aren't happening stateside, south of the border.
But just because whatever happens in the U.S. happens here by 10%.
Yes.
Jared Menkes, who is part of NAOP, he said that NAFTA won't affect anything.
Yes.
Real estate-wise here in Ontario. Are you of the same mindset?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's more of a pain for the organizations. It might cut into their profit margins. But when you look at the exchange and you look at the cost of production, we're working with American companies all the time. They're looking to move north of the border.
Are you just full of optimism because of the market you're in and you have to be? Or would you actually say the truth to me right now?
No.
Are you living in an optimistic world by accident?
No, I think there's going to be... We've gone into a plateau, not an economic slowdown. Things have plateaued where that kind of hyper growth is kind of ceased, and we're now running a pretty level amount of development. But there's a lot of shovels going in the ground, and there's a lot of companies building. We're active every day.
How many people work out of your office?
Our office is an office of 38. I'm based out of Kitchener-Waterloo.
You mentioned you had drones.
That's correct.
We had this conversation about drones, but you have really cool drones.
Absolutely.
I wish we had one of those videos running. I don't know if Alex has teed up or not. I'll talk to her in a minute about it. But you have drones that can not only survey the site or fly over the site, but actually figure out the organic material. Isn't it? Is that what you said to me?
Yeah. What we've done is we've laid out sites topographically. So, one site we're selling at the corner of Trussler Bleems in Ottawa and Kitchener. We were able to do the cartography on that with topographical mapping of the site, and we created a baseline so we could show that there's 15.8 meters above where the water retention pond would be, and versus how far that would go below there, and they can utilize that information for the amount of cut and fill that'll have to do and elevational work in the development of the site. We had another site that was very interesting, and this site had a 3-story high hill for about half the site that was all aggregate. It was all gravel based, and we were able to click around the perimeters, fly something called drone deploy, fly it in lanes back and forth. It goes automatic by itself. We plug it in a computer program. It takes a couple hours to then lay it out, click around the base of the hill, quantify the amount of metric tons of aggregate, get an actual quote, and come forward with an offer before even taking it to market. Here's an offer to buy the site, and here's the exact amount that it costs to take out, opposed to the traditional way of putting property under contract and trying to figure it out later.
After it's being...
Yeah, things should be really packaged with a pre-due diligence prior to the due diligence that happens, That way you'll get the highest price, and it'll be seamless, and everybody understands the process.
And no unknowns, so you can get more money. I mean, you take away all the unknowns, because that's what people are banking on. You don't know.
Absolutely.
And so they can say, I'm going to take off $100,000 here, $1 million there, $5 million there, because of the unknowns. And you take away all the unknowns so that everybody's apples to apples understanding what the acquisition is, right?
Absolutely.
Would you rather be buying stuff, or would you rather be selling it? Which one do you like to do better?
Really both. We have.
Isn't it a different tactile approach to each one, though? Like when you go in as a buyer in comparison to going in as a seller?
Yeah, I think any prudent investor is going to look at how much of an upside there is in a transaction. So in the case that it's a coupon deal where it's being tapped out, there's no more lift. We have clients that'll look at offloading or disposing those properties because they've realized the amount of upside, unless they want to clip coupons and get that set return. But most prudent investors now are looking for, is there an element of hidden upside? Is there excess development land? Is there a lease upside, refi upside, some additional juice that can be attained? Perhaps rebranding in the case of a self-storage site. But everybody's looking at how can I get that additional lift in the site and then turn around and benefit.
When you have protected lands, do you spend the time and effort to go figure out what really is and what isn't and what is slated for change? I live on EP land. I have a farm that's portioned off. Yes. But I know that the farm I own, they've already ran natural gas up our road. It's a rural area.
Sure.
Which then tells me, just by not being stupid, that this is up for development at some time. Yes. And I'm always amazed how governments can have EP land and then one day not.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Exactly. Or I think what they do is they don't ever really get rid of the APA. You can incorporate your development where you will have impact on the environmentally sensitive areas where people have difficulty developing. So they're actually developing adjacent to the EPA lands, but they're having difficulty with their development. And
do you figure that out then? Do you you must be forced to bring the thing to market to get the maximum value for it. You got to go, this is how you're going to work around this horseshoe.
Yeah, absolutely. And quite often when you get into those EPA lands, you'll have floodplains. So you'll have in some cities you'll have a one-tier or you have a two-tier policy. So they'll have a floodway. So between the flood line and the fringe line, you can develop, provided you have no hydraulic effect on the neighboring sites or impact in the environmentally sensitive areas. So there's lots of dynamics and lots of moving parts, but
each municipality would have their own set of terms and conditions based off of
absolutely.
That, right?
They tend to have their own conservation associations.
It's not a provincial; it's a municipal.
Yeah, provincially kind of mandated, but the conservation associations work under the province.
So do you spend that time figuring that out for?
There's lots of good planners out there, but we do inquiry calls.
You have to, right? Because somebody calls up from Shanghai and says, A, B, C, D, I want this. What about these 5 things?
Absolutely. So the first thing we do is if we look at a site and it's next to those areas, we'll pull up the Conservation Association maps. We'll look and see how much fits in the floodway or under the floodplain, and we'll make a recommendation that go forward, hire a planner, come up with a concept plan, and see what you can conceptually put on the site, and that way we can then market it. So in the event that we're marketing single-family homes,
So you give conceptuals of what can go on the site?
Well, our recommendation to link up with a planner that we know, and they usually do that in some cases pro bono or for a very minimalistic cost, hoping to get the end contract. But that gives us the tool and the ability to quantify what actually can go on the site, and then we can sell on the premise of that. And in some cases, we'll have an earnout. So we'll have a density provision sometimes that if they exceed that, then that seller can make even more money, and it's a win-win for both sides of the fence, or there will be a scale back in price in the event that you can't do that amount of development.
Cushman and Wakefield is way beyond a company that sells real estate.
Yes.
You have the leasing, you have the actual selling of real estate, you have development of some kind of property management wedged in there too, right?
Absolutely.
And I got because I'm naive enough to know what's the
Cushman and Wakefield manages 3.5 billion square feet. So
actually property manages real estate.
That's correct. So if you want to quantify that in layman's terms,
as an asset manager or as a property manager?
As property management.
Okay.
So outside of the property and asset, because some of that becomes under the asset umbrella, but really 3.5 billion square feet of property management, that's equivalent to just slightly under 61,000 football fields. If you actually do the math, I pulled out my calculator one day to quantify that. Yeah.
Is your office then? Sorry, does every Cushman Wakefield office have a proportion of it that's to the leasing, a proportion of it that's to the actual sale, acquisition, and a portion that's property management? Or do you guys all operate independently from each other?
Yeah, there is an element of
Like, are you forced to do property management?
No, not at all. We have a property management arm that's very capable in Kitchener-Waterloo. They've got great guys downtown, Edmonton, all of our markets. We're in 19 markets in Canada. Over 400 offices in 70 countries around the world.
So do you perpetuate your own economy then? Do you go, listen, you sell the building, go ahead, property management guys, step up, or asset management guys, sell it, lease it, property manage it?
We make some recommendations, but they really run independent as well. So it's not always that case. We'll property manage for assets that we're not selling, we're not active on. They're two separate entities under the same umbrella for sure.
When you sell land, and I'm going to say I'm naive. When you sell land, do you ever find yourself selling and flipping your own land that you just sold, like rollover?
Absolutely.
That
does happen, and we've had happen on sites that have sold. In the event that you take it further down the development curve, the price goes up. It's very much similar to farming. When you have farming, the farmer makes a little bit of lift. The company that's involved with the distribution makes more lift. The retailers make the highest amount of profit. So the further you get to the end product, there's more lift. And there's also less risk. So at that point in time, so the
guy pouring concrete's in a lot bigger risk than the guy who just bought the land.
So the group that's taking on the risk tends to get a little bit more lift, and so if you can get that risk mitigated, get off the table, absolutely, there's a definite lift. One of the sites that we sold of recent, a rather large development site, it closed last year. There's nothing further done except for planning work, no roads, no infrastructure, no sewer. And we have a group that wants to buy it, a national group, for $11 million more than what the current group paid.
And the only reason is?
They've taken the risk off the table. They've got much higher density than they initially anticipated.
Then originally the original plan showed for less density, and now the density is higher, so they can get more price per square foot.
Yeah, exactly, and the market's changed a little bit, so those dynamics really assist in the increased value. In the same breath, they took a huge gamble.
Yeah. Okay,
so calculated risk.
Do you help that prospectus? Is it part of your gig to go, I'm going to show you where this is today, and what that potential of this is going to be over a 1 year, 5 year, 10 year? I mean, because when you're doing land development, a lot of speculative, right? Yes?
Yeah.
No? It is?
Yeah, absolutely.
So you have to do a prospectus 1 year, 5 year, 10 year. Here's what I project.
Yeah, you're really selling it by the linear frontage in the case of single-family homes. When you get into high-rise development, what's the cost per buildable foot? And then when you get into townhomes, it'll be kind of a blend.
But when you're flipping that land that you made $11 million on that got sold for more money a year earlier, do you advise the buyer and go, okay, this is the price point here, and I think within 1 year, if we can flip around the density, turn the building slightly to the left, go up another 4 floors, didn't block the sun, we can get a better return on investment if we do all this due diligence. Do you give them that hope?
No, we give the facts. So we just.
I like the way you changed my word. No, Tim, we don't give hope.
No, Tim. We display the facts, and the facts speak for themselves. So, in a lot of cases, it's like buying an investment property. You buy on the merits of cash flow. So right now, if you're in a speculative market, we digressed back 10 years ago.
Yep.
You can make a lot of speculative buys. Now you want to buy on cap rate. What's my set return? So when you compare apples to oranges, and you're looking at this industrial building and you're putting 30% equity in, an apartment building you're putting 15% equity in, different variables, different down payments, different amortizations on your mortgages, 15, 30. A prudent investor is going to sit there and he's going to go, what's the return on my equity? So what's my cash and cash return or my distribution? And then what's the return on my equity, including my principal reduction? And he'll look at his internal rate of return, and then even more so, look at a 5 or 10 year cash flow analysis, showing the amount of capital going in to make forecasts on the return. So, you'll buy it on that premise, and then any additional lift
along the way.
That's where you're going to become a real winner.
With with Doug Ford lifting up some of the rent control restrictions, does this open up a broader market? Because I got to tell you, up until I heard that he was doing that, I didn't know how the government was going to make any more tax money.
Yes.
When they're telling landlords they can't make any more money.
Yes.
That was the number one reason he did it. He didn't do it to make all the entrepreneurs that own real estate richer. He made it because he wanted to charge more taxes eventually. But my question is, does that open up if it was me and I own some rental property, but I wouldn't want to be in the rental business knowing that there was a cap on everything, and now that there isn't, does that open a door, especially for places like Kitchener-Waterloo, London?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's also good for the renters as well, because when you lift that cap, you're now letting the market bear itself. So now you're lifting the barriers to entry. So now the developers get excited. They want to get out there, buy, build. More product comes on stream. So then that, in essence, creates supply and demand. There's more supply. The rents will find their own level, and that'll bear upon itself.
Do you think the developers are going to lean towards building rentals now again for the first time in 20 years from condos?
Absolutely. We're extremely active in that sector right
now.
Are you? So we're selling a lot of development parcels, and what's happening is there's a lot of synergies where there's, for example, like an apartment REIT, where there'll be a development partner, so the DevCo will build it. They can't take on any risk, because they basically turn back 95% of the cash flow to the unit holders. So they're risk adverse. So that development partner will build it, lease it up, and then it'll be offloaded to the apartment REITs. So the apartment REITs are really acquiring through development, not acquiring through buying existing product.
Yeah, Morguard's gotten into it in the last 5 years heavily. Morguard's been, which I never saw Morguard being in that business before, and all of a sudden they decided to be in the rental business.
Yeah, Morguard's in the regional shopping plaza business, the office business, industrial apartments. They're really hedging their risk through all the markets. So, it's...
Has there been a change? I mean, listen, from 2008 when everything was crashed and burned, and today, and then looking into 2020, you said it plateaued.
Yeah, there's been a definite change since then. So in the last 10 years, what we've seen is as the interest rates have been dropping, we've seen compression in the cap rates. So as the compression in the cap rates happen, people are buying them at a higher, at a lesser yield on an all-cash basis. That's increasing the price and driving the prices upward.
But now rates are going up again.
That's correct. So we're at an all-time low in interest rates. They're really not going to go any lower. And I don't think their interest rates are going to rise that much, but they are going to rise. There's no question. So those could be slight negative influences in terms of putting no additional compression in the caps and causing the values to kind of hold at a constant. So hence the plateau.
I had a few friends in real estate tell me there's been moments in the last 3 years where there's been absolutely no product on the market.
That's correct.
Is that true? Even in the commercial side and the...
Extremely tight. Extremely tight.
Are municipalities not allowing developers to move fast enough? Is there something boat anchor holding the whole thing back?
No. I think it's the market bearing itself. So
I have my friends says I got lots of guys that got millions of dollars. That they're looking for that right opportunity, but the opportunities aren't on the market right now.
Yes.
And it's like frozen. And is that because the government hasn't said?
I don't think it's not a
government issue.
Yeah, I don't think it's a government issue at all, because it really spans into the United States, South America, Europe. It's the same.
The U.S. have the same problem?
Yeah, absolutely. The U.S. is tightening up, just like we've tightened up. We're at an all-time low. We're at a 20-year low for industrial in this country. And if you look at various markets, they're down in some markets down to the 1.4.
Sorry, when you say low, you mean the amount of product on the market currently to be sold?
The actual industrial vacancy rate for just industrial inventory, the overall square footage is at an all-time low. So,
really?
Yeah, absolutely.
I didn't know that.
A 20-year low.
Okay, so then my question says, if we're at a 20-year low, are manufacturing jobs still leaving North America?
It's changing.
The industrial?
It's
or
changing.
Is the space being used differently?
It's changing. So what you're seeing is a rapid growth in some sectors like logistics, kind of the Amazon effect. So you'll see them taking on massive tracts, major square footages. Exactly. So we're seeing a lot of logistics move in. Manufacturing, there has to be an element of certain amount of manufacturing that's Ontario-based. It's not going anywhere. There's other sectors that, they could potentially move. But we've seen that bulk of that flight happen, and that's already taken place.
Do Do you think the auto industry is going to die in Ontario over the next 5 years?
No, not at all.
You know?
No, not at all. It's going to take a whole new direction as we're seeing what's happening with GM. We see, Toyota. If you go to Cambridge,
Yeah, huge.
They've never had a single layoff in the history of the plant.
Really?
Never.
I didn't know that.
Never. You've got Hino, which is a Toyota manufacturing facility
I know who Hino is,
in Woodstock. So we're selling 79 acres just adjacent to that on behalf of H&R REIT. We vended out half of that site to
for housing or for
no, for industrial.
Really?
It's classified as future development lands, so it could be either commercial or industrial. Half the site we've transacted to a logistics company that's heavily into the manufacturing sector. So we're seeing lots of positive things in these rural sections of Ontario, and we're seeing a little bit of a ripple effect. The inventory in Toronto is really tightened up, and you get into even markets like Oshawa. Oshawa has had almost a cooling effect by some governmental measures that it's $25 per square foot development charge to put a shovel in the ground. So if you want to build a plant there,
you're kidding me.
No, if you want to put up 100,000 square feet, you got to pony up with $2.5 million of blood money just to put a shovel in the ground.
Is that just Oshawa's problem?
No, if you go to Cambridge, it's $844 a square foot. You go to Woodstock, Ontario, it's $0. So it's really a municipal decision what kind of development charge they want to charge, and then you're going to look at being a manufacturer. What's my coverage ratio? So you've got 43,560 square feet to an acre. These manufacturing plants typically put in 20% coverage, so you're looking at somewhere around 9,000 square feet per every acre. And if you've got to pay $25 a square foot, that's an extra $175 an acre. So, you put that little added influence into the deal, it makes it a little more difficult.
So why would any municipality, like Oshawa's never been, I'm sorry to leave your hometown and go to Oshawa, but Oshawa's never been a robust municipality.
No.
Excuse my language, how the hell can they afford to have that fee tacked on the developers?
Yeah.
How do you ever get it off the ground?
Yeah, they just look at it, Tim, from the aspect that...
Is that why Waterloo's like rocking? Is because their development charges are low?
I think it does help. It does help. So we have some manufacturers that have moved out where they've made the decision because of they're on the fence between two locations. But if it's not... if there's more than just that factor, then quite often it won't be the deciding factor. But we have had it as the deciding factor where it has been a motivation for them to go to one municipality over another. There's no question.
Okay, so let's finish with what's the economy going to look like we got a presidential election coming up in the next year.
Yes.
And we've had some NAFTA 2.0 and what's the next 2 years? You're a guy, you're in the middle of the marketplace. What's the next 2 years look like? Not for you, for the common, because I got it. Because you look 5 years out.
Sure.
Listen, you did a lot of stuff 3 years ago. You know what's coming up in the next two. For the common schmuck on the marketplace, all these people walking around this trade show at PM Expo here in Toronto, what's going to happen over the next 24 months?
I think you're going to see a little bit of a shakeout happen, but that's not an Ontario thing. That's a North American thing.
Okay.
So really any sort of shakeout that's going to happen, whether it be automotive or other manufacturing sectors, it really has to tie in with the technological changes and as the economies evolve. I don't see too much of an impact in terms of, say, automotive happening in Ontario versus the States. I think what happens in the States will happen here because you have to realize that those companies, for the most part, are American-owned. That if they shut down their Canadian operation, they don't willfully do that to target Canada. It's going to hurt their bottom line because they're extremely productive and they're doing the exchange rate play as well.
Yeah, which is huge, our dollars.
It's huge. Our dollar is at a very good level for the American manufacturers.
To move up here.
Absolutely. We've got mandates right now with lots of American companies looking for buildings, and we're having difficulty finding them. And in some cases, they're putting shovels in the ground to build. But we're working with all kinds of American groups that are still moving north of the border.
How do people get a hold of you, Dave?
They can get a hold of me on my cellular office if they want to call the office 519-585-2200 and ask for David Anderson.
And LinkedIn, holy shit, you got 22,000 people or 25,000 people on your LinkedIn page. They can find you there. Do you actually respond to people that talk to you over LinkedIn, or is it just too much? Is it just too much traffic to respond to?
No, I respond to every message.
Do you really?
Absolutely. So if they want to drop me a quick hi, David Anderson, Cushman and Wakefield, Waterloo region,
And you'll actually answer.
They'll find me.
I want you to
Absolutely.
test that, because if he's got 25,000 people, you must get a shit pile of junk through LinkedIn and have to sift through all that crap.
Yeah, absolutely. Open up a dummy address there, Tim, and send me an email for a test.
I'll get Alex to send you the dummy. I'll get Alex to send you the dummy link. All of you guys send Dave a dummy LinkedIn message to see if he answers his LinkedIn account.
All right.
I'm Tim Byrne. This is Tim Byrne Almost Live. We're at PM Expo here in Metropolitan Toronto Convention Center in downtown Toronto. Davey from Cushman and Wakefield out in London, Kitchener-Waterloo. You're a wealth of knowledge. I love talking real estate with you.
Yeah,
Thank
absolutely.
you so much. Thank
Appreciate
you so much.
it. Fantastic.
I really appreciate coming in.
Can I do one last thing offhanded?
Yeah, sure you can.
Jordan's one of my partners. Can I get Jordan Palmer up here and we get a picture with a goat?
Oh, absolutely you can.
Let's do it.
Andy, come on. Andy. I don't know what a home is. You're going to smell like a goat right afterwards. Here you go. That's fine. Here, hold that. There you go. No, give us a. Want me to pick you with a goat?
I love that. This is the best part of the whole show. I don't ever get to do these. This is really fun. I feel like I got to slap it all the time. I hope you really enjoyed the show tonight. It's Wednesday night. You just finished up with Dave Anderson from Cushman and Wakefield. Really nice guy. I couldn't believe he held the damn goat. I hope for God that was left in the podcast, because that was the funniest part. He's wearing a $1,000 jacket with I think the goat urinated on him at one point. I'm Tim Byrne. This is Tim Byrne Almost Live. I am your Wednesday night drive home, whether you're on Facebook, Instagram, Spotify now, Google Music, and iTunes. I want you to subscribe, like, forward my podcast out to other people. Contact Stadia Door and Glass and Burn On Demand. They're both great companies. We're open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, all through Christmas. Merry Christmas. Have a good night.